All right, welcome back. We are COMP301. That's Linux operating system in the summer 2020 semester here at Centennial, and it's week 2, part 2 of our broadcast. And we're talking about the Linux file system as well as Linux command line, kind of an intro to Linux command line today. So that's what we're really going through. But before we start that, I want to take a look again at our schedule. I always want to zero in on our schedule. I think it's an important thing to look at. Again, we're kind of in a mishmash, and I have to be honest here, and I got to tell you this, is I'm following the schedule as much as I can based on our lead coordinator when it comes to this stuff. So remember that I didn't make the outline, and I didn't create the assignment exactly. So the stuff that you're going to get, I'm trying to follow along with the other sections so that we're all on the same page. So again, we're talking about the GNOME shell, which is the UI that we've been using in Linux, as well as the Linux file system today. We're going to get into more Linux shell next week, and then we're going to get right into Bash scripting the week after, and all that kind of stuff. So I personally think this is pretty challenging if you've never done any kind of Linux before, if you've never done command line before. It can appear fairly scary. I'm going to try and stick to the script today and make sure we capture all the things we need to. But it's like I have, and I got to be honest, I've got like 3 hours of content and I got 2 hours to deliver it. So really challenging for me. But at the same time, I think we can probably get through most of it. So that's the first part. Second is, this is the stuff we covered already. We covered things like SSH from last day. We talked about the passwords, how to set your password commands, basic commands. We covered list, ls command. We compared the commands both on the Windows operating system and Linux to kind of give you a feel of what it's like on both systems, which is an important part. We also did some pinging, some connection testing between one system and another, a very, very high-level way of starting networking. The networking task starts with, do I have connectivity? And a lot of times with Linux, especially if you're working as a workstation, you want to make sure you have connectivity if you're connecting to a server. So here we are. So that's what we talked about last day. So what are we doing today? I've released assignment 1, and I'm going to discuss it now in detail, and then we're going to get into our lecture. I like to do this first for a couple of reasons. One, remember that a lot of this stuff, if you follow along the slides, you can probably get through it. And as well, I have to be honest, some of this stuff you can look up on the internet. But this stuff, the assignment stuff, the things that I'm requiring from you, that's something that I want to make sure that everyone understands. So I go through it in a bit more detail, right? And maybe more detail than others, I'm not sure. But I do go through it in a lot of detail because I want to make sure that everyone's successful. Again, my role here and my goal for you guys for this semester is to make you guys all successful, everyone get good marks, and a really great understanding of both the operating system we're using as well as Python in the second half. That's my goal, right? So it's really, really important for us. Okay, so let's take a look at the assignment. Please don't be freaked out by it. I've put details in here not to scare you, but to help you. Okay, so let's look at assignment 1. Again, disclaimer, this assignment was not made by me for the most part. I'm giving it to you. It's the same assignment the other sections are going to have, more or less, with some slight modifications. Obviously, I've modified this thing so it works for me, but let's talk about it. So again, it's due next week, week 3, Friday, June 12th, 2020 at midnight, which means you have just a little bit over a week to get it done. Okay? It's worth 10% of your final grade. Okay, so that's what's happening. So let's read through this. Working alone, you will execute Linux commands to complete the list of tasks, create a slide deck, record your observations in a short video, and upload it to a streaming video provider such as YouTube. Okay, that's kind of the general instructions. And in here, what it talks about is each of the Linux commands. This section is worth 50 marks. So the whole thing is worth 100 marks for the entire assignment for it to get done. But the Linux command piece is worth 50 of those 100 marks. It will not be the case going forward that it'll be split up like this. This is the only assignment. Why? And I've made it this way. I wanted to make it survivable. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff that you've been asked to do, but part of it is, for the first time, you're going to actually do things like do a video. Some of you have never done a video before, right? Is it homework? No, this is an assignment. This is something you got to get done. What do you mean by homework? Are you saying, sorry, Kervin, are you saying that it's like, is this something that we're going to do together? This is you do, kind of thing on your own, right? So, yeah, it's an assignment. So this is a take-home assignment. You're going to do it. It's going to be due next week on Friday, okay? Okay, so let's go through it. So each of these tasks, so where I say 1A as an example, make a directory under your home directory called Documents, and next make a directory on the Documents directory called Spreadsheets. What it says is, what is the absolute path for the Spreadsheets directory? You should know how to do that, and that's worth 5 marks. Okay, so you've got some other steering directions almost the same, and if you read through this entire document, so use the cat command to create a two-line file in your home directory called data info. We'll talk about some other ways of doing that as well. Set the permissions, append. So when I hear the word append, I always think about add. I want to add, kind of additional information onto a file, and usually append means at the bottom. That's what append means. You're going to add to. You're not going to overwrite. Overwriting is a whole different thing. Make the spreadsheet directory your working directory. How do you do that? Make copies of the data info file in the spreadsheets directory. Make certain you're in the home directory. Change your command prompt so that it shows the current working directory. That's a trick that you're going to have to look up how to do, because I'll tell you right now that the documentation that we talk about today, and I may not have a chance to show you how to do this. If anything, I may show you how to do this on Tuesday of next week. Okay, but for the most part, if I don't, you need to kind of look up how to change your command prompt so it looks different. Change your home directory, use the remove directory command, and so on. What happens? Delete your data info file for both your home directory and your spreadsheets directory, and it talks about how to do that. So a few little tasks, and really they're not that difficult for the most part. Most of them are just like, you're adding or deleting, removing or concatenating or anything like that. It's pretty straightforward, and they're each worth 5 marks equally, each of the tasks, right? So that gives you a total of 50. If you follow along, you should be able to get most of this on your own, but just the stuff that we've already talked about, okay? Okay, the next part is your slide deck. So you're going to make a simple slide deck, very simple, like you've done before. If you did my 5% bonus task, which most of you did, there were some people that didn't do it. I just as an aside, since we're talking about the bonus task for a second, some of you did fantastic. I think I haven't seen like some videos like that from students in a while. Others, you did okay. You kind of put some stuff together. You follow the process that I asked you to. This is good practice for what like I said to you, for what you're doing, with this thing. Remember that the bonus 5% that you would have gotten if you completed your intro video is a bonus. So that means it's on top of everything else that I'm going to give you here. And so if you slip a little bit with this assignment, or if you don't do well on your quiz this week or whatever, that 5% is going to kind of patch in some of those holes. Was my intent, and it's good practice for you. It's like an extra piece of homework, to get you to understand how to record. I think my underlying reason for it is you're going to get better at doing that for other courses maybe that are going to ask you to do that, or just as a life skill nowadays in this environment. I think it's important that we all know how to record and share our, kind of our findings with other people. There's got to be, different ways, and this is the one for now. So slide deck. So you're making a slide deck. The title slide has to be there. That's one requirement. It's worth 5 marks, just the title slide. And it means you have to have a current picture of you, just like you've done. If you already have this slide, this is a beautiful thing. See, I'm kind of rewarding you twice. If you already have this slide from your intro video, fantastic, you're golden, because you can just use pretty much the same slide with a few more pieces of information. One, make sure your full name is in there, your student ID, your assignment number, course code, and name. Some people didn't do that, which is okay. And the date completed. Whenever you complete your assignment, put that date on there. I'd like to see that. And then I have to put it this way, several slides where you include screenshots that capture all the sections above. So what I mean is do a screen cap of these different parts. I don't want the entire screen captured. I'm going to talk about how to capture screens later for some of you. Hopefully you'll be able to do that. And then make sure that there's one slide for each letter. So for example, 1A, there's a slide. 1B, there's a slide. 1C, there's a slide. 1D, there's a slide. Slides don't take any time to make. All right, so it looks like a lot, but actually there's not a lot of information I want with a slide. It just gives you room to play with the format, so that way you can format the way you like and put as many screen captures as you need and any kind of information that I'm asking for. For example, in slide 1A, you would put in, what is the absolute path? I'm asking you a question here. What is the absolute path for the spreadsheets directory? Right, well, put that in the slide. Say the absolute path for the spreadsheets directory is whatever that is, right? And you can figure that out with the pwd command, right? So that's kind of kind of important stuff. And you do one slide per. That's like 10 slides. So 10 slides just for this. But again, guys, don't think about it like 10 slides. Oh my God, Tom's making us make a 10-slide PowerPoint. No, it's really not like that. It's more like you're going to take a screen cap and you're going to put it on the slide. You're going to take another screen cap, you're going to put it on the slide, and you're going to kind of format your slide so that it answers the questions, for what I'm asking you to do. Okay. After you make the slide deck, you're going to create a video. And like I talked to you about before, every assignment, we have 4 assignments together, and each assignment is going to require a video. This is one of the times you're going to need a video for this course. And okay, I got to give you guys some feedback about what you guys did for your demo videos. Some videos I had to remove half a mark from your demo video. I didn't want to do it because it's really a bonus, and I struggled how much I should remove, but it was literally, I could not hear you at all. Like there was just no volume, right? And a lot of times this is because you're using the mic that's built into your laptop, or you're using a very poor mic. Some people wore kind of like some headphones or whatever. I'm not sure how you did it, but some people were very, very clear. Other people, and I'm talking about maybe a handful, 4 or 5 people, their volume was so low that the closed captioning wouldn't work. It wouldn't pick it up. It picked it up as noise or music, actually, believe it or not, right? So that is like how low it was. So please, you need to improve this. When you upload your videos, please make sure that you're clearly heard. If I can't hear you speaking on the video, you're definitely going to lose marks this time around, because I need to know what you're talking about. I need to hear you. Other tips that I recommend is have a notes page attached to your slide. So you're showing a slide or whatever. If you're going to show the slide, or you're going to show me doing things live, which is what I'm asking you to do, have a notes page that you're following so you just don't ramble and you don't do ad lib stuff. This takes a little bit more prep. Okay, so and again, I don't expect you guys to do any video editing here. I know some of you will, because some of you like doing that kind of thing, and that's totally fine if you want to do video editing, but you don't have to. I literally just want to see your title slide from your slide deck. That's going to be your first card that you're going to see on the video. I'm going to see who you are. You're going to talk about your student ID and the date you did it and all this kind of stuff, an intro kind of thing, and then you're going to get right into discussing each of the tasks. So there's a couple ways you can do this. You're going to do it live. Okay, so you're going to actually be in the operating system. You're not going to necessarily show me your slides. These slides are for me to look at as backup when I do your marking. So I'm going to look at the slides, look at your video, see what you've written down there, and then watch you do it. I want to see you doing it live, right? So this can be a challenge, because you're going to have to start and stop a bunch of times. So what I say here is you need to stitch your video together somehow. This is not that difficult if you're using something like OBS, where it allows you to kind of put your video together. And remember, you can kind of, there's other platforms and tools out there that allow you to put things together. But basically all you need to do is start and stop your video every time you're doing your demo. I recommend, I'm just going to let you know this, that you may want to trial this out a couple times. And this might take up some time for the first time. And that's why I'm giving you 25 marks. So remember, 50 marks are just for the commands. The actual work that you're going to do is only half of what you're going to get marked on. Your slide deck is another 25 marks just for this assignment. So this assignment's going to be lenient, and you're going to get some marks for your PowerPoint slides, right? Because you need to do some work. You need to do some captures. You're going to capture your work, and you're going to put it on this on the assignment, and you're going to get some marks for this. I have to give you some marks because you're doing work, right? And it's going to take time for this to be done. As well, the video is going to take time, because you're going to have to using the information on the slides, you may want to show your work again. You're going to go through the process again. You're going to be able to, kind of steer me through the entire thing and show me that you know how to do everything. Okay. So that's also going to take time. So I need to give you some marks for that too. So the video portion of this one is also worth 25 marks. Okay. So 50 marks for the Linux tasks, 25 marks for the slide deck, 25 marks for the video for 100 marks. Okay. And this is the breakdown. All right. So you can see that run each task listed successfully. That's 50 marks, right? As an example, your slide deck worth 25, demo video worth 25 for a total of 100. Okay. Now this, in order for you to be successful with your submission, you need to submit your slide deck in PDF format. So convert it to PDF, please. Because again, some of you are going to be using Google Slides, some of you are going to be using open document format or LibreOffice or whatever else you want to use. It doesn't matter as long as I get it PDF format to me, so I can look at basically a big PDF document. I'll just scroll through it and I'll look at all your slides. It'll have all your answers and it'll be a great backup for what you're doing. Okay, and then your working link to your video. Some people didn't want to use YouTube. Please, you know what? I've had several weird things come up. Most people, I would say, used YouTube in their demo video. They listened to me. There were a couple people that didn't. One person worked out well. The other one, not so well. Right? So please, I recommend YouTube. I think it's really easy to set this up. It's not that difficult, and especially with OBS, and because you're starting and stopping a bunch of times, I think YouTube is your best option. You can certainly broadcast live on YouTube too, and then it automatically records. That's also another thing. That's what I'm doing right now. It's actually automatically recording my content while I'm broadcasting live. So that's totally cool to do. It's up to you how you want to do it, but that's it. Then 10% of your final mark is what this thing is worth. Okay, so please don't take it lightly. 10% is a good hit on your GPA if you don't get this thing done, right? Late submissions, 20% deducted for each day late. So if you hand it in on, this is due Friday of next week, hand it on Saturday, it's automatically out of 80. Hand it in on Sunday, it's automatically out of 60. Anytime after that, 12:01 midnight on Sunday, beyond that, you're into the 40% range max, because I'm just going to deduct 20% every single time, right? And it's not because I want to be an ogre and make you all crazy and deduct all these marks. It's just that you have to be on time. So and so I can mark everybody and I can be on time. So please make sure that you're on time and you plan accordingly. And what I mean by that is, I know there's other courses, okay? I know this is not your only course. I completely understand that, and I respect the fact that some of you are taking 7 courses, some of you are taking 8 courses, whatever, or more. So again, just I highly recommend you plan accordingly. And what I mean by that is, don't wait until Friday to do all your work and record. It's too much. I recommend you go through everything, make your screenshots and all that kind of stuff, record some of your video pieces, your components of your video throughout the time that you're working on it. You might have to sit down a couple of times because it can be long and tedious. It really depends on how your process works out, but don't wait until the last day. Waiting until midnight or close to midnight on Friday and hoping that you're going to get it in on time with the internet speed and everything else, it's up to you. And you can submit your assignment multiple times if you want. It has to be done, like the entire thing has to be one submission. So what I mean by that is, don't give me like piece parts of the video. I'm not going to accept that, right? I'm talking about, like, if you want to, you can submit it once, and then if you want to fix it, you can submit it again, and I'll take the latest one, the last one that you're going to submit. So worst case scenario, you have something that you're going to submit on Friday. Okay. Does that make any sense? And again, I'm asking this question from you guys. I don't want to make you all crazy or anything like that. It's not about that. It's actually, I want to break it down so you can describe what you're doing, and then you can get things done. So how do I take screen caps? I got to talk about this. I use ShareX. That's how I do it. There's a little program you can download. Some people use different ways. You can use Control Alt print screen or Alt print screen. It's totally up to you how you get it done, but I find that ShareX gives me a little bit more control, and it's free. So if you go to ShareX, it's just a tool that I like to use for screenshots, right? You can also use it for screen capture and all kinds of other stuff, that you want. I just use it for Screencaps. So again, if you notice, if I just go here to this is how I've set it up. I go to my little tool, kind of down on the right-hand corner, and if I click on ShareX, it automatically allows me to select different parts of my screen. So let's say I want to select this part of my screen right here. I can just do that, and then I can just let it go, and then it'll copy it into my my clipboard. And then if I want to, let me just go back to PowerPoint here to demonstrate this. I can literally just Control V and paste. So you see I have that screen clipping, and I think it's a really neat way of doing it. It gives me more control than using the clipping tool that's built into Windows, in my opinion. And that's how I make my stuff. If I ever clip anything, or if you ever see a kind of a screen clip or whatever, I use ShareX to do it. Okay, so again, you can experiment with the tool. There's some really cool tutorials on how to do that, but it helps you do this kind of thing as well. Okay. Starting and stopping your video can be challenging. Okay, so if you go back to what I've asked you to do, which is here in the video, it's like you have to start and stop your video a bunch of time because you want to show your work. And sometimes you want to practice. Come back, make sure you can do what you're doing, not just fool around and try it and fail. You don't want to show failure. You want to show that you know what you're doing, right? So what it takes sometimes is you going and trying it by yourself first off screen, and then recording your video when you know what to do exactly. All right, and it might take a couple of takes. And then you need to stitch it all together. And what I mean by that is, make your video so it fits together. There's some tools online that can definitely help you do that, where you can stitch things together. And I know that people are some really cool things that you can do, right? So Windows Shift S, okay, great. I like those. Anything like that, it doesn't matter to me how you do it. It's just a matter of can you get it done, all right? So you put things together, and then again, please make sure that I can hear you. Okay, that's really important, and that I can see your screen. That's another thing. This time around, really, I was looking at a bunch of PowerPoint presentations for the most part, and you talked about yourself. There were a couple people that recorded themselves. Thank you for that. That was also fine. You didn't really have to do anything except for that, kind of that first title slide anyway. So that was good. You could record yourself. Here, you can't really record yourself. All right, this is like screen recording. So there was a couple of people, for whatever reason, that actually recorded their screen with their iPhone or their Android phone. They actually used their Android phone to record the screen while they were doing stuff. I don't know why they did it. It was two people that did that. And again, and other classes I have, there's people that did that too. Please don't do that this time around. I don't want you to record your screen. You're going to get all kinds of really weird, kind of scan lines when you do that kind of thing. Please don't record your screen that way. Don't use a video camera or some kind of, handheld phone to record your screen. You can capture your screen with a tool like OBS or other screen capture tools like we mentioned. All right, even if it's a trial version and I see a watermark on it, I don't care, as long as I can see your screen and I can clearly see your Linux commands through your VM. Okay, if I can't see those Linux, your screen or the actual commands are all blurry because I can't see your VM, that's not great, guys. So please make sure that if you can't see it, like actually go through your video, watch your video, make sure that you can hear yourself and that you can see what you're saying. If you can't, I can't, which means you're going to lose marks. That's just how it's going to be. Okay. Questions around the video or anything else that we've talked about? Microphone is broken. Yeah, I hear you. If your mic is broken, you have to do it some other way. All right. So, you got to figure that out. I'm sorry, but that's part of the requirements. And I want to do it for a couple reasons. I need to hear you, right? I want to hear you discuss stuff. Think about this as an oral test, if you will, back to the old days with an oral exam. And the great thing about this is you're kind of putting together. You're actually showing me or teaching me in some ways, what you've done. And I think one of the best ways to learn is to actually demonstrate, right? So I think you guys are going to do a great job doing this. Yes, you could do that. Can he use Google Speech instead of his mic? Oh God, Tiago. Like a robot voice, you mean? Yeah, I know you're trying to help. I don't know, I guess so, but that's just, I prefer the voice, right? So, any time limit, yeah, please don't, try and make it 10 minutes. 1 minute a slide. There's 10 slides, 10 minutes, kind of thing. And that's why it's, and the reason why I'm saying that is because it shouldn't take you that long if you're prepared to kind of make, each of these things happen. Like literally the commands can take like 10 seconds, not even, right? For everything. Is my preference for it to be longer or shorter? I think if it's, Joseph, I'll have to say this. I think it's within 10 minutes, I think is my preference. If it's beyond 10 minutes, you got to think of me from a marking perspective, okay? For example, what if you were you were my TA, as an example, and you were marking everybody, and you've got 30 papers to grade equivalent, right? If everyone takes more than 10 minutes, holy crap, that's like 30 times 10. That's how long it's going to take me, right? So would you be rather 7 or 10? I'm fine. If you make it shorter, and as long as you capture all the details, if it's shorter than 10 minutes, I'm okay with that. I mean, again, it has to be legible. It has to, I can hear you, all that kind of stuff. If I can do that, and if you can do it in 5 minutes, all right, I'm totally cool with that, right? But it doesn't, the minimum length is not a big problem. It's the maximum length is the problem for me because, again, I got to go through everything and mark everything within a reasonable time frame, right? So, any other questions around assignment 1? So, just to follow up with what we're saying, there's lots of time to do this. It doesn't sound like a lot, but I want you to think of it this way. This is worth 10% of your final grade. This assignment should not take more than 10 hours to do. And you guys are going to be like, oh my God, 10 hours. No, I'm not telling you it's going to take 10 hours. I'm saying if this assignment takes more than 10 hours for you to do, that's an indicator that you need to do more work. You need to do a little bit more reading. And also, it might take you longer because you're a perfectionist and you want to make your video look awesome. Or, you know what, you have to try things a couple times. It didn't work the first time, you got to try it again. Or you're having problems with your VM and your VM breaks. Anything like that. It could take you a little bit of extra time. Testing is part of it. So I want you to think about this as, some kind of report that you're making, but you're doing a video report. That's really what you're doing with me. Okay, so you're going to see this more and more. Not every professor is going to ask you for a video. I'm one of those that are going to do it, but I think it's a great life skill that you're going to build, to justify what I'm talking about here. Why? Because you'll be able to discuss what you're doing. Okay, that's the one thing. You'll need to do some research. There's going to be some stuff that you're going to have to learn to do on your own, which means you're going to have to Google it. You're going to have to look at the book resources that are recommended. There's going to be some other things that you're going to have to do because, part of what we're doing is, hey, do this. Here are some demonstrations in class. There's going to be part of it that you're going to have to kind of figure out to do on your own. There's going to be some variance as well, which means you might find a resource online that tells you to do it one way and some other person might do it a slightly different way. I'm open to that variation. So I'm not asking you that there's not exactly always one surefire way to do something. There's many ways to accomplish the same thing. So I'm going to be lenient when it comes to, did you accomplish the final result? Okay. So think of it that way. Okay. That's what I'm just going to tell it to you this way. So, I'm not going to be like, you must follow A, B, C steps in order for you to complete assignment 1. And there's only one way. There's never only one way when it comes to computers. Okay, so, or typically, I should say, let me qualify that. Any other questions when it comes to assignment 1? Because I've got to move on. Yes? Sorry, I'm just reading. So, Tom, when you say several slides where you include screenshots that capture all the sections above, what do I mean? I mean like each section, one slide. Yes, you would include like the finished kind of capture. So here's an example of how it looks. You might have to make a couple of little clippings of your screen to show here's kind of a before shot, here's kind of an after shot. And you're going to do that anyway with your live your live demo, because you're going to go, okay, here you can see I'm doing a list of my directory, and you can see here that I don't have any other subdirectories. Okay, let's make a directory here, and you're going to do that live. You're going to show it to me. So that same kind of piece, when you do it live, you're going to show it to me in that one slide. Now you can use more than one slide if you want. If you need more room, you can use as many slides as you want. But I don't think you'll need more than one per question, because 1A, I mean, it's not asking you for a lot. You can certainly do a couple of clippings from your screen to kind of show the progression of what you've done. As long as you demonstrate that and you do it in your video, you're good to go. Okay. Any other questions around that? Okay, so if you have any questions around this, I'll definitely take questions at the end. I'm going to leave between 4:20 and 4:30. I'll leave that part where the day is done for us. I'll stick around if you have any questions. I'll stick around today if there's any people that have installation issues still. I'll stick around if you have time, if you want to discuss any problems or one-on-one things. Again, 4:20 or so after that time. If I can make it a little earlier, I will. But again, I got lots of content to go through and not a lot of time. Okay. So I'm going to move on now. So again, just one final thing about your demo video, guys. One more thing I have to say is thank you so much. Some of you had kind of discussed a lot of stuff I didn't expect you to discuss, things about yourself, a lot more about things about yourself than I would have expected. Some experiences were really cool. Some people just talked about the future and how they see themselves graduating from Centennial. Other people talked about visions of the future, flying cars, autonomous vehicles, AI, immersive VR, all kinds of stuff that I heard. And it makes me happy to think that as technologists, all of you guys are technologists or in the information technology field. You're thinking about what your place is going to be in society, and maybe some of you are even thinking about what society is going to look like in the future, especially now with everything that's happening with COVID-19, with some of the things that are happening in the world politically and all this kind of stuff. Where do we fit as developers? And I think the developer role is huge. I think it's huge. It's really important, especially since there might be an indicator of how we're going to be interacting or connecting with people in the future. So just wanted to say that one thing and move on. But really proud of the people that actually did that. I think it was, they went through the process. It was, some people did it for the first time, like you've never recorded before, and this is a great thing. Okay, if it's a first for you, that's fantastic. Other people were professionals. I'm talking about really high quality videos, and I think that's great too. I think you're gonna do fantastic when it comes to your assignments, I'm sure. Okay, so let's get moving on this stuff. So I'm gonna bring up our little VM again. So let's bring this back up. Here we are. So please follow me through this. Again, I'm just going to start it. I'm going to leave the networking the way we had it before. Notice the networking is bridged, right? I don't need it to be that way right now, but I'm going to leave it that way. So I'm just going to kick off my VM. So please do the same for yourself as we move forward. I know some people are coming in late. Thank you for coming. Try and make it so that you're on time. There's some stuff that I'm going to cover. I know that the class is being recorded, but you might have had a question that I could have answered, and I obviously can't answer it live when you've come in late. Okay, so try and make it on time as much as possible. I know that everyone else has a different schedule, and also that you might have run off of one class and into another one. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that happens, right? So, it's totally cool. Just try and be on time as much as you can. All right, so hopefully by now you're kind of where I am, where you're switching on your Fedora Linux VM. I think that's where we want to start from. And remember last week or last day what we did? We kind of went into the command line, and I want to focus a little bit on more command line stuff today. Okay, so hopefully whenever this thing feels like starting, we'll get going on it. And if it's this slow for me, I'm sure it's going to be just as slow for you or in the same range, especially if you've installed the latest update. I didn't. but it happens like this sometimes where you have a little bit of a slow running VM. Like, look at that, it's taking a long time, and I've got all my settings turned up to max. So let's see what happens. There we are. Yay! With a little bit of patience, we're able to log in. Okay, so here's a question for you. You have troubleshooting. Curvin has troubleshooting his VM. Okay, no problem. So here's a question I have for you. Why do you think it takes so long? I mean, just from a hardware perspective, I've got a pretty good processor, right? And I've got some memory assigned to this thing, so it's not like the memory, right? And I mean, the VM hasn't really changed. I'm still using the same. Why would the VM take long? I have an SSD, and it's an M.2 that I'm running this VM off of, right? So you got to figure that there's nothing that's slow in terms of from a bottleneck perspective. We have limited resources allocated to it. Okay, that's one. That's for sure. But I mean, it should spin up really quick, right? I mean, if you're using a traditional hard drive with this thing, I mean, my thinking is it'll be really slow. Machine inside the machine, allocating part of everything. I agree with you, Tiago. I think that's definitely one of the reasons why it's slow. Broadcasting, yeah, I'm taking up some resources on broadcasting. I'm sure if I did a kind of a, if I wanted to look at my CPU utilization, my GPU utilization, you'd see it's pretty high right now for what I'm doing. Yeah, I mean, there's all these things. So hopefully for you guys, you're getting a better experience than I am. Which is good. If you're getting a better experience than I am, that means that I'll be slower and you can watch, right? If I'm getting a better experience than you are, that means I'm going to be faster than you, and that means you're going to have to rewatch, which is not as optimal. Okay, so I'd rather be slower than you is what I'm saying. Okay, so last day what we did was either we went through this, we talked about ways of getting into the terminal. I've just put my terminal on my favorites bar here. You can go into it by clicking activities, or you can press the Windows button, or you can press Alt F1. Those are all three different ways to start this bar off. And then of course what I want to do is I want to hit my terminal window. All right, so here's my terminal. And you can see that in the local host, it tells me who I am, my local host, and there's a little dollar sign. Dollar sign means I'm just basically a user. That's all it is. We talked about a couple commands, and I've got this little message says that there's important stuff that needs to be installed. I'm going to say not now. Homework for you guys: if you have the same message, please get it done by next time. So next time we come in, you've already updated your VM, so we don't have to see that message again, and I won't have to see that message. So I talked about ls, so list is what this is. I've also talked about ls minus al. Minus is like a switch, and if you actually did the man page, if I go man ls as an example, man is the manual, ls is the executable command, and it tells you what it does. So if you ever wanted to know what a command does, you just have to type in man space and the command that you want to learn. All right, so here as an example, it tells you two things. What is ls? This is the list, the directory contents, right? And then it says here's how you use it. ls followed by a bunch of options or file. All right, these square brackets mean they're options that you can add in. ls minus a or minus dash dash all. It says do not ignore entries starting with dot. Okay. Dash capital A, almost all. Do not list implied dot and dot dot. Dash dash author, and there's many other ones. You can see, you can go through the man pages. There's a lot of different options here that you can add in to help you with your commands. Okay, so every executable command for the most part, remember what they were before? What are executable commands? What are they? We talked about this briefly last day. What are these executable commands? Are they just commands? Are we just going to call them that? What are they really? Utility programs. Very good. Thank you for that, Steve. Right? And the reason for that is because these little programs, the utility programs, have been created with either C or C++, mostly with C. Okay? And when we're running them here locally on the command line, we're calling up these programs to make them run. That's what we're doing. Okay? So pretty much that's how we start. And And so far we've done that. The other thing we've done is when we do a ls minus a, let's say we do ls minus a, you can see that that is this way. ls minus l, it does a list. Notice that that's the difference between al. A means all, including the things that are hidden. L means in a list format, as opposed to in a kind of horizontal, as opposed to kind of this vertical format. All right, so I like using -al to show everything. So again, if I was going to clear the screen, the command is clear. So ls minus al does everything that's hidden in kind of a list format, as opposed to kind of a horizontal format. Okay, so that's what it does. So this is a pretty good way of doing it. Okay, so ls minus al. You see a bunch of stuff on the left, and one of the things that this PowerPoint talks about is what all of these things mean. It's going to talk about that later on. We're going to go through it, as well as who is the owner and who has access. Okay, so that's kind of the thing that this talks about. Here, this is the size of the file typically in bytes, right? That's usually how it is. The date that it was created, right? As an example. So you can see some of them are older than others, and this is when the system was created. We did this together, right? So that's kind of a way of listing stuff. Okay. So if I want to go into my documents folder, let's do that. I can do that with the cd command. So cd space and then the name of my documents folder. And remember, this is case sensitive. So documents. By the way, notice if I press the first couple letters of documents, if I just go something like cd space do and then tab, the tab key, right? But if I keep going, if there's more than one, for example, documents and downloads have the same start, do. But if I go doc, nothing else has documents in there, you can just press tab and it'll autocomplete that folder that you're trying to get into, right? So cd space documents and then press enter. CD means change directory. That's what it means, right? Change directory. Again, I can clear. I can do to find the absolute path, I can do a pwd. So that tells me my absolute path, home, Tom, and then documents. That is the path, right, that I'm showing here. And there's a couple of things I can do here to create a new file. All right, so if I wanted to create a new file, and a lot of times we do, right, I could use obviously a tool to do it, like Visual Studio Code. I can use Visual Studio Code to create files, or I can use the command line, and that's what we want to try and do. One way of doing it is using the touch command. So if I go man touch, I want to find what touch does. It says touch is change file timestamps. Okay, and what it does is if I say touch and then the file name, it'll actually say, it says update the access and modification times of each file to the current time. A file argument that does not exist is created empty. See that? That's a way of making a file just by using touch, and then the file name, and then done. Unless the -c or -h is supplied, right, it's going to create a file for you. So this is kind of the way it works. Man pages, right? So that's one. So if I said, as an example, I'm just going to clear again. If I said, you know, touch, and then here is a sample file, so I'll call it sample file.txt and press enter. And if I just do an ls now, you can see that I have sample file.txt that was created. Are you with me? So that's kind of one way of creating the very simple way of creating a file. The other way of creating a file is if I use the cat command, right? If I use the cat command. So again, let's take a look at cat and see what that looks like. So again, if I go man cat, I'm not a cat man or a Batman. It's man, the manual for cat. All right, and the cat command is concatenate files and print on the standard output. Okay, I like that. I like that. And it says concatenates files to standard output with no file, or when file is dash read standard input. Right, as an example, it'll read, and then what we want to do is Control D, right, to stop that from happening. Right, so that's what we want to stop input. We want to stop concatenating. Okay, so how does that mean? So if I say something like, let's make sample file 2. So if I say cat, and then I'm going to use a pipe character kind of like an input character. The greater than sign allows us to send information. I want you to think about it as it kind of points almost like a little pointer or an arrow that points information or is piping information into. Piping is the wrong word. I shouldn't use piping because there's also a pipe. But basically funnels, maybe funnel is a better way, funnels information or things into a file that I specify. So example, sample file 2.txt. And if I press enter, it's not going to leave me out of things. So I can say something like hello world. And usually hello world should be something like this, traditionally, right? Hello world. And then if I press enter and then control and D, right, it'll get me out. Not control X or control C or control Z, but actually control D. Control D will do it for us, okay? So control and D together, all right? That's what you want to do. And that's what it does. So now if I want to look at this thing, I want to look at the file, there's a couple ways we can do this. Hey, let's use GNOME to look at the stuff that we're looking at. So if I go to activities, you can see that I can certainly go to Visual Studio Code this way and look at it, right? I can also call up code in here. If I just put, like, if I enter code here, you can see that if I do that, what it's going to do is it's going to bring up Visual Studio Code. If you've installed Visual Studio Code properly, here we are. It's going to bring up VS Code, right? I think the VS Code is probably your best bet from an editor perspective since it's been installed, all right? Yes, we can use VI, and we're going to talk about VI in a later video if you don't have access to Visual Studio Code, but heck, we have access to it. Let's use it, you know, kind of thing. One cool thing about VS Code is it has a terminal that's built into it. This is kind of neat. So if I press Control and backtick, Control backtick, backtick is the character underneath the escape key, or it's next to the tilde, all right? It kind of looks like this in the terminal, Control backtick, right? And if I keep pressing it, Control backtick, I can toggle the terminal on and off. And I can kind of kill two birds with one stone here. And what I mean by that is I have my editor and I have my terminal in one place. For me as a developer, this is optimal, right? If I was a Linux administrator, it may not be optimal. But as a developer, this is cool. It's cool that I have everything in one place. I don't have to necessarily have this open here for me to access, you know, the terminal. Okay. So one thing you can do is all the terminal commands you can do outside. You can do here. You can see that this is where I'm at. I can also do an ls -al. All the commands here. I'm just going to get rid of this window welcome screen for a second in Visual Studio Code. Hopefully you're with me on this. You can see that it's the same information. I can certainly do the same cd and then doc, and if I press tab, it still does all the same kind of commands as before. So if I say, let's just clear that screen and then do an ls, you can see I've got those two files. Okay, I'm going to close down VS Code and do this again. Okay, so code is one way of doing it. What about if I wanted to open up a file like samplefile.txt? Is there a way of doing it with code? Does code take an input? Can I say something like code samplefile2.txt? Would you think it's going to open up that file for me? What do you think? Right? And the answer is hell yeah, which is awesome. I think this is a good thing. Why? I can immediately look at my code through code, right? I just literally put code. You have Visual Studio Code in here, and you can open up your file, and you can see that it's hello world. Also notice I have a space down here. So I have two lines, line 1, line 2. And I've added hello world here, right? And what if I want to add other stuff? I'm just going to close this down for a second. By the way, if you notice, if I kind of hit this, I really don't have a folder that I'm looking at. VS Code can work as an editor, but it can also work to create a kind of a working folder here, right? So if I click Open Folder in VS Code, it'll ask me to swim to the folder that I want to look at. So for example, hey, it's actually looking inside the Documents folder because this is where I opened VS Code from. And if I press OK, then the whole Documents folder is going to be in there. The other thing we can do is I can make a folder here in the file system that I want to work on. For example, let's call this workspace. So here I'm going to use the UI to do it. I'm going to call this folder workspace and then press create. It's going to create a folder called workspace. I can then press OK. And when I do that, what's going to happen is I have direct file access with VS Code right here. Notice that I'm inside the folder workspace. Okay, that's what I can do. And then I can create files with VS Code here like this. I can say, here's my new file, new file.txt. I can do that, and I can type in some information. You know, like this is a new file, right? And then press Control S for save. And if I was to leave this environment, by the way, if I press Control backtick right now, notice where it says I'm Tom localhost workspace. Workspace is the working folder that I'm in, right? That's what this tells me. And I can verify that by using pwd. So if I go pwd and press enter, it tells me my absolute the coordinates for my workspace. It even gives me a clickable link here. Look at that clickable link. If I click on the link, you know, as an example, Control click, what does it do, right? Well, it doesn't really do anything, but yeah, it looks like a clickable link. It says follow the link. But you can see that this is the file. I can do an ls, right? You can see that new file.txt is there. Hey, where are my other files? Well, they're in the other folder that I left behind. Okay, so if I wanted to swim to find those files, I can certainly go up a level. So cd space ... moves me up one level to the next to the folder above this one. Okay, this is a subfolder of the documents folder, as you can see, right? Tom documents workspace, which means workspace is inside of the documents folder. So if I go up one level by pressing cd space ... then press enter, then it's going to take me to the documents folder. And you can see now if I do an ls, then I should be able to see the sample files that I have here. Okay, sample file and sample file 2. All right, so I'm going to get out of this for a second, VS Code, right? I'm going to get out of VS Code, and I'm going to go back here. I'm back in documents, right? I can do an ls now, and I see three things. I see sample file 2, sample file.txt, as well as workspace. Notice workspace is blue. Blue means directory. Okay, that's why you should think about it as. Okay, so blue means directory. Okay, are we clear about everything I've done so far? Any questions so far? Because I'm going slow, believe it or not. And I'm going to go faster, and I don't want to go too fast where people are like, wow, what are you doing, Tom? Slow down. Clear, but I'm going too slow? All right. You have too many blues. Too many blues means you have other folders, you're in the wrong spot, right? So yeah, so if you notice, if I say ls -l, you can see that this is a directory. Directory has a D in front of it on the left-hand side here. That's what indicates it's a directory, okay? That's interesting that it did that. Who created it and how big it is? By default, directories are 4K, right? So 4 kilobytes, right, or whatever. 4,000 bytes, right? That's what it is. The files are really small. Like this sample file is like 0, and sample file 2, which has something in it, is like worth 14. What about if I wanted to append something to sample file.txt through command line, which is what I'm asking you guys to do, by the way. I have to make it clear that even though I've just used VS Code to make files, my expectation is for your assignment number 1 that you do everything with Linux. All right, so that means like through the command line, which is important to do. So what if I wanted to, kind of add additional things, or whatever, into my my file. So I have my sample file.txt. It's 0 bytes, which means it's completely empty, right? And I want to push stuff into it. How do I do that? Well, what if I did this? What if I said ls -al, pipe that into, or push it into, is that possible? Can I do this with sample file.txt? I'm using the same character. Is that going to work? What do you think? Before I enter. Okay. Oh yeah, I like what Steve is saying, cat, and then, this. But will this work? Is what I'm asking. So I did this. And then let's take a look at my files now. You can see that now my sample file.txt is 260 bytes, right, long. 260 bytes long. So what happened? Okay, let's take a look at that. So if I say code for now, and then sample file.txt and press enter, it's going to open that up with VS Code. I know it's a bit of a waste. And then now you can see that I've captured my list, my directory listing, right in here. Actually, what it did was it appended my directory listing in here. Okay? Closing that off. Let's try that again. I'm just going to clear the screen now. And let's do something else. Like, for example, there's not just ls, but there's something called ps. So if I go man ps, what is that? So ps, it says a current snapshot of, or snapshot of the current processes. That's what it is, right? So what does it look like? So if I go ps, it tells you that these are the processes that I have running right now. I have a bash session, and this is my process ID, 2489. Okay, my process ID. And let's add in another process. So let's run code by itself. Okay, so here's code. I'm just going to pull this down here so you can see it. So this code's running. By the way, code opened up the last thing that I asked it to open, which is sample file.txt by default. Okay, you can configure code so it doesn't do that. So that is code. And then let's take a look at the processes now. So if I do ps, you can see now that I have bash and ps. Wait a minute. Where's my code? How come I'm not seeing my code process? Right? So ps, can I do a? Is that possible? Well, yeah, I can do it that way too. It can show me the command, right? So gnome session, that's different. The a command gives me a different set of processes, right? And then what about if I do a ps minus l? Is that something that's common? Well, yeah, it is. So just like we had ls minus l for everything, ps minus l gives us more information. It gives us the process ID. It gives us a unique identifier for the thing, as well as it tells me a couple of additional pieces of information. All right, so the time and the command and so on. All right, so that's what kind of it does, which is kind of cool. All right, so those are kind of things that it does for ps. So what if I wanted to pipe ps into the same file, sample file.txt? Can I do that? Okay, so let's see if that's possible. So I want to kind of add it on or append the ps stuff, the process. I want to do a ps minus l and pipe it into, funnel it. I think it's a better way of saying it for now. If I do ps minus l and I want to kind of send it, if you will, to the sample file.txt, and what does that do? If I did this, does it overwrite? What do you think it did? Or do you think that it added things? ps minus e, here's ps minus e. That's awesome. Thank you for that, Steve. It's pretty cool. You can get all kinds of process information. That's pretty awesome, right? And again, you can use ps minus el. You can combine all those things and so on. So that's pretty cool. But what do you think, going back to what I asked, what do you think that previous command did, this one? ps minus l sample file.txt. What do you think that did for us? It's overriding the previous command. Well, let's take a look. So if I do code and then sample file.txt, what do I got now? Well, I got this. It actually overwrites. So overwrites, right? So that is a negative, just like you guys are saying, right? So what about if I wanted to add to my file? Now, Steve says, I'm going to go with Steve. Steve's been pretty on the money here. What if I use a double pipe or double, a different kind of command? So if I did something like this, if I said, let's try it again. So I said ls minus al, and I want to use two of these. What does that do if I put it into sample file.txt and press enter? Let's look at that again. I'm just going to use the up arrows to do the last command. It's code sample file.txt and bring that up. And let's see what I get now. Is it any difference? Yes, that's when we, we get an appending. I can append stuff with using two, kind of like a double pipe character. I hate to say the word pipe because in my mind, my old version of Unix in my mind, the pipe character looked different. Okay, so what I mean by that is I used to have a pipe character that used the pipe character, like this pipe character here, which is, I was putting it on line 10 here inside of Visual Studio Code. That pipe character is above your enter key typically, okay, or it's next to the backslash key, right? It's just the same character. It's just shift back the backslash, and you get that pipe character. So what does that do? So let's try if that even does anything in this version of Linux, right? So if I say something like ls-al and I use the pipe character, I'm going to pipe it into sample file.txt. What does that do? Does that do anything? And you're going to see that in this version of Linux, that pipe character that I'm so used to using doesn't do anything. All right. Even the double pipe, if I change this to the double pipe, so if I double pipe and into sample file.txt, that's not going to work the same way at all. It actually is just going to ignore the double pipe. What it actually does is it ignores the previous thing and just gives me your listing, which is what we're getting here. All right. So really, we can always think about this, kind of greater than sign as I'm just looking at some of the comments you guys got going on, as a pipe, or what we like to say, the redirection operator, right? So a single redirection operator, that single greater than sign, what it does is it redirects the output from ls-al, and if the file doesn't exist, it'll create one. If the file exists, it'll overwrite. Just a single redirect, character, the redirection operator. If I use two redirection operators, that means that I'm appending, I'm adding on to, right? And that's part of your assignment number 1. Okay, so let's clear that up. So I've got some files, but I'm thinking they're pretty useless here. I want to move them from this folder into my workspace so I can use them, right? That's kind of a simple operation, right? So is there a move command? So if I go man mv, you can see that mv is the move command. Move is like copy, right? And we're going to use the copy command and the move command in a second. And let's just go back and try that. So if I do copy, if I say copy is a cp command. cp, that's copy. If I copy my sample file.txt, I got to give it a destination. What I'd like to do with my destination is /workspace. All right. You can also indicate another file name if you want to. For example, my new sample file. Right. You can do that if you want. It's optional. If you don't, it just copies the original name. And if I press enter, it'll move it or copy it. So here I can see that I still have my sample file. If I go to my workspace, right, and do a list, you can see now that I have my new sample file.txt, but when I actually inspect it, you can see that it's the exact same content as I had in my sample file, right? Because it's a copy. That's what it is, right? So kind of straightforward stuff. So let me review that again. So let me go back up one. What I did here is the following command. I said copy, right? So if I go back to my history, I can just arrow up to get that. Copy the name of the file that I want to copy, the destination of where it's going to go. Okay, so this is my destination. My folder name, workspace, followed by an optional file name. Okay, however, if I don't want this, so let's say, for example, I don't want to specify a file name. I just want to specify a workspace folder, the folder, and I press enter. Right? Let's see what happens now if I go to workspace. You can see now that I also have sample file copied here. Okay? Does that make sense? So if I don't indicate a file, here I indicated a file. I said I want it to be called, when I copy it, I want it to be called something new. Right? My new sample file. If I don't do this part, then it just copies it with the original name, whatever that was. And that's what I'm getting here. That's the result. Okay? You can use definitely start. Be careful about start. Thank you for that. But you can use definitely wildcards, and we'll talk about that in a second. So let's just go clear And you can see that this is here. So now I have a copy. I want to delete something. I want to delete my sample file from here because I've already made a copy. I want to delete my sample file, so I can say delete sample file. Remove is the delete. That's what it is. Remove. RM is the command, right? Remove sample file. Press enter. And if I press list, you can see now that I've removed my sample file. One thing to note is it's not the same as removing it from a UI perspective. Typically what we want to see is if we had inside of our file manager, if we deleted it, a lot of times in our file manager, we can swim to the trash and see what's deleted in here. Notice that when I removed my sample file from my command line, it did not go to trash. All right, it did not. There is no trash that happens automatically when I use the remove command. You can do that, but you have to set it up differently. Does that make sense? So if I remove, it's gone forever. You can't recover it. Okay. I want you. There are ways, but I want you to think in your mind. It's gone forever. Okay. So again, if I do ls, you can see that this is the command that I'm listing again, and I want to remove the other one. I'm going to remove my new sample file.txt. I want to remove this. Actually, I want to rename it. Is there a rename command? Right. So if my thoughts are it would be man rename rn, and the answer is there isn't. So how would I rename something? As an example. Well, let's think about moving it for a second. Let me go back up one and come back to this. So here I've got my old file, samplefile.txt and samplefile2.txt. I want to move my samplefile.txt into my workspace. So I can say move samplefile.txt to my / workspace, right? It's going to move it now. Move does that command. What move is a little batch command that basically says copy it in here and then delete. That's what move is, right? So I've moved it. Let's check to see if that's true. What about if I want to look into a directory, but not actually go into the directory? So I've been using cd, right? I can go cd / workspace, and then I'm in there, right? But what if, I'm just going to clear the screen again. I'm in my documents folder and I just want to peek into the workspace directory. I can do that by saying ls-al / workspace, and then I can look inside that workspace. I'm actually looking inside of, I'm looking inside of the workspace folder. Okay? Does that make sense? I'm still sitting in documents. This is my current path, right? But I'm actually looking inside the workspace folder. That's what I'm looking in here. I'm looking in here. Right? So that's a very valuable tool because sometimes I want to sit outside of it, look into it, and do stuff to it. Okay? So again, I want to, I've moved things across with the mv command. So let's go into my workspace folder. Look, I'm not using /. It's still okay, right? And I want to rename my my new sample file.txt, right, to sample file 3. So I can say like move my new sample file.txt to the new file name that I want, which is in the same folder. I'm not moving it anywhere else, to whatever it's going to be called, which is sample file3.txt. And if you look and see that now, you can see that now my new sample file.txt is gone and has been renamed to sample file3.txt. There was a question, can I move more than one at once? Yes, there is. There's a way. Let's do that by going up one. All right, so I'm here. I'm up one. Let's make a copy of my sample file 2. So copy sample file 2, right? And I want to call this sample file 4. Sample file 4.txt, right? And I want to move both sample file 2 and sample file 4 inside of my directory. So I can say move star.txt. I can specify only text files. Star means everything as a wildcard, anything before the txt. This is the formula or the pattern that I'm looking for. And anything that's star is, it matches everything. That's what star does. everything that is before the txt. So all files that start with something dot and then end with .txt. Okay, so move star.txt to ./workspace. And if I do it a list now, they're all gone. If I list into the workspace, let's say -l ./workspace, you can see now that I have sample file 2, sample file 3, sample file, a new file.txt. How about if I wanted to modify something in another folder? Same thing. I can say there, I can move ./workspace and then sample file.txt. I want to call this ./workspace. Got to be specific here. And then sample file 1.txt. Just going to make this a little larger so you can see the thing. There it is. So all I'm doing is I'm saying go into the folder workspace, take sample file.txt and copy it, but change it to read a different file name. That's what I'm doing. So the move command, it deletes it. First it copies it and then deletes it. That's what it does. So if I do that, and then if I peek in there again, you can see now that I have new file, sample file 1, sample file 2, sample file 3, sample file 4. Okay? Does that make sense? I know we did a lot of little copying and moving and all that stuff, but we need to do this as part of your assignment number 1. Can I use star.star? You can. Star.star means copy everything. It matches everything. And be careful with star.star because you can also use it to remove everything. It can also be used for matching purposes. So if I do something like, if I clear it, and let's go into that folder now, ./workspace, just to make it easy. And let's say, for example, and I want to point this out, I want to move, or I want to only delete, I want to remove more than one thing. Can I do this? Can I say like remove sample file 1.txt and also sample file 3.txt? Is that possible? Can I do more than one removal at the same time? Press enter, and if I do an ls -l, you can see that it did exactly that. It'll do a list of things that I want to remove all in one blow, or I can add in as many things I can copy as many things I want. I can list all the things that I want to copy and where I want to copy them to. Okay, so again, it's usually with source destination in mind. So when I remove or I copy or I move, it's source and then destination. Okay. Questions around file manipulation a little bit. This is like kind of like the lowest level of file manipulation you need to know. Okay. The other one is I want to make a new folder. I want to make a subfolder. So I can do something like make. Normally it's like on the file system it's like make dir, right, in Windows. If I go man make dir, okay, you can see that it actually exists here, right? Make directory, that's what it does. That's what it stands for, right? And I can simply do that. I can say make dir, and I can name the directory what I want. We'll call this folder 1, okay? And if I do a list again, you can see that I have now a new folder 1, a new directory called folder 1, and I can move stuff into it. I can say move new file.txt into folder 1. Well, you can do that. And if I look inside folder 1, ls -l /folder 1, you can see that it actually shows me this, right? And I can pipe that into something else by using the double pipe character. All right, so kind of really simple stuff, making directory. How about removing directories? Well, now, if I had another one, if I make directory, right? If I make directory folder 2, right? Let's clear that. You can see that I have folder 1 and folder 2. It doesn't tell me what's in there as an example. So that's folder 1 and folder 2. And if I want to remove folder 2, and I can use the remove directory command, let me look at that and see what that looks like. So man remove directory, does that exist? Yes, it does. It removes empty directories. Okay, what happens if it's not empty? Well, let's try and do the removal of the empty directory. We know that folder 2 is empty. So if I say remove directory folder 2 and press enter, then if I do an ls-l, you can see that folder 2 is indeed gone, right? But we know, right? We know that if I do ls-l folder 1, you see it has something in it, new file.txt, right? So if I do the same command again, if I space up one, a couple of them, and go to folder 1 instead of folder 2, it's going to go, meh, sorry, can't remove folder 1, directory not empty, right? So that's a conundrum. What do we do to remove a directory if we don't care about the folders inside? Well, let's use our man pages to help us out. So we'll go man, remove directory. Is that going to be the way to go? And again, you can see that it says press H for help. If I press spacebar, it's going to continue down the path. So it says ignore fail on empty. Ignore each failure that is solely because the directory is not empty. So it'll ignore it. Minus P parents, remove directory and its ancestors. Okay. Minus V verbose, output a diagnostic for every directory processed. Right. And that's it. So there isn't a way of doing it. There isn't an option. You can clearly see there's no option to do that. Right. Well, that sucks. Right. I mean, if I want to remove a directory and it's not empty, do I have to empty the directory first and then do it? Well, you can use another command, but caution, I'm going to caution you here. This command is very dangerous. Very, very dangerous. Okay? For example, I could say something like, and by the way, I've screwed up before when I've done this. If I do an ls command, right, and if I do an rm remove now, remember that what is remove? If you do a remove, it says remove files or directories. It can do both files and directories. Remove directory just does empty directories, but remove directories does something else. Here's something you can say is if the -i interactive once option is given and there are more than 3 files, or the -r or -R or -- recursive -- recursive are given, then RM prompts the user for whether to proceed with the entire operation. If the response is not affirmative, the entire command is aborted. Okay, so what is -R? So if you look at -R, it says recursive. Remove directories and their contents recursively. Okay, so that's pretty cool. We could probably use this. -D, remove empty directories. Okay, cool. That's pretty crazy, right? So be careful about this, right? -R, that's a pretty crazy command, right? Here's something else you want to watch. -F. Ignore non-existent files and arguments. Never prompt. All right? That's like, don't prompt me, just delete it, guy. All right? And what that means is, if I use both those two things at once, like something like this. If I say, let's list, I want to get rid of folder 1, I can just simply say rm -rf, and then folder 1, and then bye-bye, it's gone. Gone, gone. Gone, forever gone. And there's nothing you can do to get it back. So here's the danger. Don't ever do this. I'm going to tell you what to do, but don't ever do this. It says, why is it saying cannot create directory permission denied? It may be where you are, Nushig, right? So if you're in the wrong folder, if you're not in your documents folder, you may have to use special commands to do that. But I want to talk about this. Here's what you, be careful of what you want to do. If I say something like, let's make a directory, make directory, and we'll make a directory called, folder 1, and I'll make another one called folder 2, and another one called folder 3, right? You can see I've got 3 directories now, right? And I want to get rid of everything. Let's copy, actually I don't care about the files, because we can always remake those. What if I said something like remove ***, right, -rf. And is it -rf ***, or minus star, but can you do -r -f instead? Yes, you can. But be careful. You want to separate them, in other words, right? No, you usually want to do it all at once. So what if I did this? What if I said remove, and please don't do this if you're not in the workspace folder, and if you do this in some other critical folder, it may make your Linux installation unstable if you have the right permissions. In other words, it'll wipe everything out. If you go do this in the root, it'll completely wipe you out. It is something that is not good. And usually a lot of Linux installations, distros, they'll stop you from doing this anyway. But if I did this and I press enter, then it's gone, right? Here's something that didn't go, though. My folder 123 didn't go, right? So I would have to specify specifically, because this said star.star, right? Star.star, well, guess what? Folders don't have any dot in them, right? And they're folders and they're not files. I got rid of my files nicely, but not my folders. What if I said something like, you know, folder and then star? Is that going to get rid of all my folders? Because that's a wild card, isn't it? And if I press enter and if I press list, yeah, they're gone. So be careful. Be very careful, guys. Right? This can be like a killer command. It'll delete everything inside the folder if you're not careful. Let's redo that. So I'll say make directory folder 1. Actually, I'll just scroll up. Remember, you can just use the up arrow to do that. Right? Here's my 3 folders. I'll make a couple of files. So I'll say sample file 1.txt. Right? I'm also going to make sample file 2.txt. You can see that I've got those now. And I want to pipe a list into sample file 1. So I'm going to say ls-al, pipe that into sample file 1.txt. And I want to do, for sample file 2, let's, concatenate. What if I did, cat, and I want to pipe into sample file 2.txt, and I want to add some stuff. Hello, this is a short message. And then Control D, right? I can do that. And then what I want to do is I want to append something into sample file 2. So maybe something like the process. So PS minus E, right? Uh-oh. And I want to double pipe that into sample file 2.txt, right? And now I want to inspect everything. So I press code and see what it looks like. Let's take a look and see what I get. So let's get rid of this. We don't care about that. Don't save. And I want to look at the folder. You can see I can open my folder into what I want to look at. I can see I want to look at workspace and press OK. What workspace does here in the folder, actually it allows me to inspect each of the folders. See, they're empty. But sample file 1 gives me all of this. Sample file 2 gives me hello, this is a short message, followed by all of this as something that I've trapped in here. These are all things that I've gotten, right? So I can kind of pipe stuff into this thing, right? Okay, I just wanted to show you this. And then what I can do is I can just simply move, let's clear this and do that again. I can move sample file 1 into folder 1 and sample file 2 into folder 2. A couple ways to do that, right? If I want to move, let's move both of them actually. Move both of them. Sample file.star. Let's move both of them into folder 1, right? And then, what happened? Sample file 1.star. Oh man, I meant, and you can't undo, eh? If I go into folder 1 for a second, let's move that back out so I can show you. So I move sample file. Here's something that you should learn. txt ... I want to move it up one. Want to move it up to the previous folder. I can do that. See, it's not there anymore. You can see it's here now, right? So again, all I'm doing is manipulating. I'm moving from one folder. I'm jumping from one folder to the other by piping things around. Let's move sample file 1 and 2 into folder 1. Let's try that again. So I want to move sample file and then star.txt. Right? Notice the star is the wildcard, right? Into folder 1. And if I list, you can see both of them are gone. If I look at folder 1, you can see that they're both inside here. And I can copy both. Copy both up 1. Here's something you can do also. Up 1 into folder 2, right? So that goes up 1. This is going up 1. And then this is going into the next folder, the folder up 1 level, which is this one, right? So I'm inside folder 1, and I want to copy this up 1 level and then into folder 2. Okay, let's see if I can do that. So See, let's look what folder 2 looks like. Actually, let's look in there. ls -l / folder 2. You can see that that's there as well. And folder 3 is empty. Okay, so I want to wipe everything out at once. How do I do that? So here's my folders. I want to wipe everything out. How do I do that knowing that there are folders that are in there and one's empty, the other two are not empty? I can just do rm -rf and then folder star. Be careful when you do this. It wipes out everything and you can see that they're all gone. Questions around simple file manipulation. We covered the copy command, the man command, the ps command very briefly. We talked about the remove directory, make directory, remove folder, remove file, wildcard characters, all kinds of stuff, right? And moving up and down using the ... and /. Anybody have any questions at all? I know it was fast, but this is a great reason why we're recording stuff. And I got some other stuff to cover. I've moved through the PowerPoints without actually looking at the PowerPoints because we had a lot of stuff to cover here, guys. And I wanted you to get most of the things you need for what you need to do. There's still some more. So yeah, this talks about mounting and unmounting, and it talks about two different file systems: the Unix file system or the extended file system, ext or extfs. We use the extended file system here in Linux. That's what we use, right? It's modeled after the UFS, right? And there's different newer versions that are the extended file system 2, 3, or 4, okay? So that's what that is. It also discusses in the PowerPoint the hierarchy of order. So example, we have the root folder, and inside the root on the same level, we have bin, boot, dev, etc., home, and so on. That's what this talks about. And then inside the home folder where we have our users, we have different users, and inside their user folders, they might have other folders. So these are the parent folders, and these are the child folders or subfolders, right? And it's the same thing. This is the hierarchy that most Linux, Fedora Linux is what it looks like, okay? And if you look here, it discusses in the PowerPoint different things in some of these pages. I'm not going to go through this, although the quiz that you're going to have next week, it might ask you about this. It might say, so in the Linux thing, and by the way, hopefully, I've seen most people do probably a 8 on average on the quiz. I haven't seen perfect yet because I know it's tricky. Remember, you get 2 options. If you haven't done the quiz yet, guys, it is due this Friday, if I'm not wrong, at midnight. Please don't wait. There are no extensions to do the quiz beyond Friday at midnight. So please make sure that you get to that quiz as soon as we're done today, if possible. Okay, that means tomorrow at midnight. All right, so it talks about some of this stuff. Yes, it's very nice, and it also talks about the total volume of partition size. Chances are, guys, you and me, we're not going to do any kind of manual partitioning. So this is for information purposes only. Okay, and it talks about the tree structure, which is what I just did, where the / indicates the root. That's what it is. So if I ever want to go back to this and I want to go to the root, I can just simply go cd space / and you can see now that I'm in the root. These are all the folders in the root. You can see that the folders that are this is critical to understand. Anything green, anything blue, right, is I want to talk about this as these things are folders, but then what's this L here? What does the L stand for? What do you think? So we've got like L and we have got D. Well, these are like system files, right? sbin, lib64, lib, and bin. These are like do not touch folders. In fact, most of this at this level, I highly recommend, links. You definitely don't want to change any of this stuff, okay? Not at this level, all right? By default. All right, and most of the times the system will stop you unless you use the sudo command. Highly don't recommend you mess around with this at this level. Okay, this will mess you up. Stay inside of your home directory. Go to home, right? As an example, oops. Go to home and then go to your home folder, the name of your folder. You can also get there by just going CD and then tilde. Remember we did this? That takes you back to your home folder, right? Shows you that we're in the home folder as well, right? So whether you do CD tilde, or if you can do explicitly get in there, you can CD/home/Tom. However you do it, you want to work within the folder and not anywhere outside of there. If you start running around amok inside of the system folders, there is a chance you might delete an important file. And remember, at this level with terminal, there are no trash or recycle bin to save you. There's no undoing. When you do it, it's done. All right, so please be careful about this. All right, so that is that part. It talks about different peripherals that you can add in and how to connect different peripherals. We're not going to do this by hand, and it starts talking about each of the. I'm not going to talk about this. Each of the structure, the hierarchy of the entire file system. So it talks about these things. This is for you to read. So I recommend do a read before next week, because next week chances are you're going to see some of this stuff. Well, actually, your current quiz will ask you about mount, but the next week's quiz could also ask you stuff about this week when it comes to some of the stuff that's been written here. So be careful about this. One thing to note, it says that /bin creates binaries or executables that are needed to run the system. So be careful about doing anything with the /bin folder. And it keeps going into each of the folders, talking about their purpose. Why are they there? I highly recommend you go through this and look at some of this stuff. And it talks about what each of these devices. So, for example, the dev folder is all about devices, all the devices that have been added in. And there'll be listings about anything that it sees from a physical device to a virtual device that's listed here in the dev folder. Okay. And there's two types, if you notice. There's difference between character devices and block devices, right? Again, some of this stuff is a little long in the tooth. A lot of computers nowadays don't even have a floppy disk and stuff like that, or even an optical disk. So sometimes some of this stuff won't even be relevant for us right now. And then the etc. has a bunch of, or the etc folder has a bunch of system files. I recommend, again, these are configuration files I wouldn't touch right now at this point. Your home folder, that's just you. That's where you can work inside of. Lib, kernel module, security information, all that kind of stuff is in there, as well as symbolic links to other library files are in there. The MNT directory is really where we clearly specify device types that we want to mount in here. Media folder is self-explanatory. The proc folder, it doesn't take any files, but what it does, keeps track of all the processes running in the system, right? The root folder we talked about before, the home folder for the entire operating system, pretty much. That's where the system administrator can live if he wants to administer the system. SBin is really where the system starts. It's almost like, and there's other folders in here for system repair if you wanted to do that kind of thing. Temp directory, right? A place where you can process different files. The USR folder, different things that they put in here might be things like accounting programs, manufacturing programs, research application programs, office software. All that stuff is usually in the USR folder. That's what happens there, and so on. Okay, and it talks about how to use the mount command. So what it does here, it says here's the syntax: mount, option, and then the device name to mount, whatever the device name is, and the mount point. So I'm mounting a device that I know that's been specified for the CD-ROM, and where is it mounting? Inside the media CD-ROM point. That's where it's going to have a link, a symbolic link for this particular thing. Okay. Again, are we ever going to get into mounting and dismounting hardware? The answer is no. That's not part of our course. A little bit outside of what we're doing this semester. Okay. Path names. This is important. We've kind of covered this a lot. Again, the slash or / character separates the folder names. This is different in Windows. It's backslash, and usually between Linux and Windows, people get confused, right? When you're operating on the web, then again, a lot of times if you're in a Linux server, you want to use the / as opposed to the backslash. Windows will understand the /, but Linux will not understand the \. So the answer to me always is always use the / if you can, and it'll save you trouble. It'll make your files, especially from a web perspective, cross-platform a lot easier. We talked about the tilde character. Sorry, I'm rushing through, but I want to make sure I handle everything before the end, and I do apologize for going forward. There's different shell prompts that you can use that I'm not going to cover today. I'm going to go back to this later on. The pwd command we covered. We also covered the cd for change directory command, and this gives us an example of what dot and dot means. Dot means same folder. Dot means previous folder or up one, like we talked about before. Listing contents, there's different switches. We talked about listing contents. And now this is where I wanted to come to, which talks about what all this stuff is. Number of links, owner, the group, right? So owner, group, and the size in bytes, right? So again, 4,000 bytes, like I said, 4 kilobytes, right, would be what it is, size in bytes. The date and the time of last modification, as well as the file or directory name, whatever it is, okay? File type and access permissions are right here. This is the file type and access permissions, which we'll talk about in a second, all right? So that's how the directory structure is broken out. We talked about wildcards really briefly with some great prompts from some of you guys, right? Which is, hey, what if I use star.*? What do I do there? Also, the question mark is interesting. It replaces a single character, right? So you can always say, you can put a question mark in between the word if you want to use more than one thing. I use the star, but question mark is really cool because it's a single character. So that's another type of wildcard you can use. We talked about creating and removing directories. Remove directory only removes an empty directory. Make directory, again, creates directories for us. We can list all the directories we want to create and remove all empty directories in one blow. But we also talked about the copy and remove commands, where remove doesn't just remove files, but also can remove directories with different switch options, like we showed before with the -rf. All right, where you don't always have to use force, but I always tend to. Just going to be honest, right? And this is where we come down to this part here, which is the last part of what I want to discuss today, was just configuring file permissions for security. Again, this is going to be on your assignment. So yeah, so what does this all mean? So D is a subdirectory, L, symbolic link, B, a block device. We don't see any of that stuff here. C, a character device. So if you have C, B, or C, and if you're trying to delete those, yeah, that's going to be really weird for you, right? Typically, we want to usually only handle Ds and files. So directories and files is what we want to get into, okay? So that is the file type, the first part of this. I'm not sure why, but this should be deleted. Yay. And then it kind of breaks it down. So here is the file type. This is the owner permissions, the first 3 octets, or octals, if you will. This one, and this one, right? There's group permissions come afterwards, as well as other permissions here. All right, so this is the breakdown that you should know. So we can use something called the chmod command, or change mode, right? And this is what it does. And what it does, it changes permissions. So for example, if I wanted, for me not to be able to read something, notice this read, write, execute. So question for you. If I took away my write permissions, right, somehow, if I did that, taking away the write permissions, and I could specify who, right? So again, U is owner, G is group, and O is others, like it says down here for the command, right? So let's think about this for a second. If I took away my write capability, would I be able to delete the file? If I took away my write capability, my owner's write permissions, can I take that away? What do you think? Do you think I can delete the file if I take away the W from the owner? The answer is no, you can't. All right. Here's what it can look like. So typically you have a chmod command, or change mode, chmod, some people call it that as well. And what it does is it says you specify the owner, right? Different parts of this mean different things. Remember, so if I go up one, if I go to here, then U means the owner, right? G means group, and O is other, right? So that is what that means. So if I go back here, what is this doing? So it says user, group, and other. I want to add, read, write, and execute. So this gives me ability to add all that to all of those groups. User, group, and other. I want to add, read, write, and executable permissions. So if I was to do that, let's go back to our little code here for a second. Of course, I took too long, so it logged me off, but that's okay. That's good security. So, and again, I'm running out of time, so I just wanted to show you this. So if I did ls, and if I go to documents, and if I look at workspace, right here I am in workspace, and I want to make some folders. Make a folder 1, oops, and folder 2, and so on. And let's go inside of folder 1, and we're going to add a new file called newfile.txt as an example. And then I want to list the file. Here's my file. You can see that the permissions that I have right now are read, write, but for others it's only read, not write. I want to add read, write to everybody, so I can issue a chmod, right? And then what I want to specify is the user, group, and other. I want to add, read, write, and execute, like it says. If I did that, it says, missing operand, right, for read, write, and execute. Well, I need to specify which file that I want to do that to. And if I did that, you can see now that that file is green because it's executable. All right, so be careful. And it's also executable because if I looked at the permissions, that you can see now that I have everything in there. Read, write, execute, read, write, execute, read, write, execute. Look at all those are read, write, execute now. If I want to remove that from something, so again, I'm going to clear the screen, and I want to remove that, I want to say, okay, so chmod, so I want to keep my user and my group, but I want to remove read, write, and execute from other. I could say that other minus read, write, and execute, new file, .text. And then when I look at the permissions now, you can see that it changed from this to this, where dash means has no access. Notice it still stayed green because I can still make it executable. If I want to remove executable from both user and group, I can do that too. I can say chmod user and group remove executable for new file.txt. And then you can see now that I've removed the executable part of those things, and new file is back down to a regular file again. It's not something that I can execute. Anyone can manipulate the file? Yes, as long as you have access. Again, depending on who you are. Are you the owner? And we are the owner because we're the administrator. So yes, you can, right? But if I'm not the owner, if someone else made this file, so you can see Tom is the owner, right? Tom is the user, right? So I'm the owner and the root, right? I mean, at the end of the day, if someone else is the root and then there's a different owner, I made, let's say, a John account, I can still see the John files, but I may not be able to manipulate them unless I use super user access to do so, okay, which we'll talk about another time. So that's chmod. That's the one way of doing it. So one way of doing change mod is this way, okay? We can also use something called octal permissions, all right? Octal permissions. And for octal permissions, they gave us a couple of listings of this. So, for example, give all permissions to root, the owner, read and execute to group and others. You do a chmod 755. And by the way, there is a listing of this. So if I did 711, what do these numbers mean? These are all octals, right? This means something. And it's a quicker way of doing it than doing this. However, you know, it really depends on what you want to use. Both permission formats are good. So let me just go back into there and go to chmod. So again, clear, man, Schmod or Schmode, right? Change mode. And you can see that it says there's two formats. You can use the mode that you want and the file that you want to reference as an example. By the way, you can use wildcards here as well, so you can use you can affect more than one file instead of just one file. Be careful about this because you can lock yourself out of certain things, right? And if you scroll down, right, it talks about numeric mode is from 1 to 4 octal digits, 0 to 7. That's why it's octal, because it goes from 0 to 7, just like hexadecimal goes from 0 to 9, and then it goes A, B, C, D, right? E, F, right? So that's the kind of stuff it does. So be careful. You know, again, it's derived by adding up the bits with values 4, 2, and 1, right? And omitted digits are assumed to be leading 0. So the first digit selects set the user ID 4, set the group ID 2, and the restricted deletion or sticky 1 attributes. The second digit selects permissions for the user who owns the file 4, write 2, and execute 1, right? So that's the second one that it does, right? So again, first, like it says, first digit is for the user ID, right? And then the third selects the permissions for other users. So again, user, group, and other, just like before, right? And again, where read is 4, if we just did a 4, write is 2, and execute is 1. So that's why 777 would mean all users, right? All groups and all others have read, write, and execute access. That's what 777 means, because you add everything together for all this stuff. Okay, this is where that numeric file comes from. So let's try this out and see how this works. So again, sorry for running overtime, guys. But like I said, I have tons of work to do and very little time. So if I want to add everything as the same thing we did before, I can just simply say chmod 777 and then new file.txt. And now when we do an ls-al, you can see that it has everything. That's all in there. However, if I wanted to say that, remember that read, write, and execute. So I want to read and execute. It would be 4 plus 2 is 6. Or so read and write, but no execute. So I could sit there and say chmod, right? And I want to do, and if I put 0, it's nothing. So if I go 770 new file.txt, what does that do? Well, it does exactly what you would expect. For the last one, it removes all the permissions, right? And if I want to add only read permissions for the last one for others, then I would say chmod, right, 774, that's read only, right, for a new file.txt for other users, right? Read only. There's read only, right? But no write and no execute, okay? And let's just do that again. I'm just going to go up a couple and remove that. So I'm going to say I want to remove everything again. So I removed everything. So the last one is again empty, but I want to add only read and execute. Then I would say chmod 77 read, right, is 4, execute is 1, so that's 5. 775 new file.txt. And then if I ls-al again, you can see that's exactly what it's done. Read and execute, but no writing. Okay, and again, you can look at the man pages for that. If you were confused there, if you go man, and if I look at chmod or chmode, then you can see exactly what I'm talking about. It talks about user, group, and other in that range, but then these digits, 4 is usually the reading, 2 is the writing, and 1 is the execute. That's what it means. Read, write, execute. And you add these digits up. And for example, if I want to read and execute, it would be a 5. A read and write would be a 6. A write and execute would be a 3 for each digit. So example, if I said 333, then it would be write and execute, but I can't read anything. So again, if I say, it's the last thing I'll do, guys. If I say chmod and I say, 333, right, of new file.txt, then you can see that now I can write and execute everything, but I can't read anything at all. Okay? But I can still delete everything. And if I go up one, because writing is deleting, here's my folders. I can still do remove -rf folder star. And then you can see that they're all gone, regardless whether I have it or not. So that really is everything we need to know in a nutshell. That should give you most of what you need to go through your assignment number 1. Again, it talks about all that stuff in here, and the rest of the slides are really a summary, and a command summary is at the bottom, which is kind of useful, I think. cd, chmod, cp, ls, and make directory mount, remove directory, unmask and mount we didn't really use, but that's just something that you could look up on your own. Any questions around all of this? Why it's showing more wrong answers than my expectation? Is it for the fill in the blank question? For example, I got 8 out of 10, whereas my 10 answers are correct. Yeah, I got to check that. I'm going to go through all the quizzes when you guys are all done. So after Friday, I'm going to go through and see what you did. Because if everyone got like 8 out of 10, but not 10 out of 10, and if the fill in the blank, the problem with that is, and again, I didn't make the quiz. The problem with the fill in the blank is that if you make a spelling mistake, or if you add a space or something, it'll mark you as wrong. I have a question, but it's out of topic with regards to my VM again. Okay, Kervin, if you can wait, are you able to wait after, and then we can kind of hit that? Okay, great. Anyone else have any questions relating to what we talked about today? Okay, so I'm going to stop recording in a second, but here's what I want you guys to take away from today. So we talked about simple Linux commands, the very basic Linux commands today. Remember that most of this stuff that I showed you is going to be directly impacting the ability for you to do assignment 1. You need to know the stuff that I'm talking about and other things that you need to figure out on your own. Please do your research, go through, try and do the things on your own first. And then remember, you can always back out, delete everything again, and start from scratch. You can start from fresh all the time, and you can have multiple folders to practice in. Whatever you do, do not try and create a folder outside of your home folder where you're going to mess around in, unless you know what you're doing. If you know what you're doing, Steve seems to be someone who knows what they're doing, right? With previous experience and so on, that's okay. You can work in another folder. But if you don't know what you're doing and you mess around with anything outside of your home folder, and your Linux doesn't work anymore, like you can't boot up anymore or something like that, that's on you. I'm not going to say, well, and if you don't have a backup, you should have a backup by now too, right? For your assignment number 1, which is due next week, you should be able to, restart or do something from scratch with your with a separate VM, even if it doesn't matter to me, as long as you can show me that you know the commands. That's okay. And guys, people make mistakes. It's totally cool to make mistakes. So what's due tonight? Tonight, nothing, but on Friday, that's tomorrow night at midnight, you have your quiz 1 that's due. Please make sure you get it done before tomorrow night at midnight. Do your best on it. Make sure you look at the your PowerPoints and everything to get it done. And also, there's 2 attempts for everybody. We should take care of people's accessibility issues as well, because you get 2 tries to do it. It means double the time for almost everybody. Okay, that's 1. The other thing is that I want to mention is that next week, just to reiterate, assignment 1 is due next week, Friday at midnight, which means you just have just over a week to get it done. Please don't wait to start. I would start right away. Then you'll have questions for me on Tuesday when we meet together, and I can try and answer some of those problems before we get to Thursday. Thursday is kind of a critical day. We should have more of the things done and recorded before Friday. Okay, so that's what I'm doing. What we've done so far. For the people who are good, I will see you guys all next week. For the people who aren't good, I'm going to... Yeah, thanks. I always say Tuesday. I meant Monday. No, keep correcting me on that one. I always think for whatever reason it's Tuesday and Thursday, but it's actually Monday and Thursday. So next Monday we meet, and you'll have quick things to talk about if you do something over the weekend. But you can always hit me up. Wednesdays, one thing to note is that Wednesdays is a great day if you want me to connect with you directly, if you want to work with me, if you want to book some time with me, and you need like 20 minutes or half an hour to go through a problem, connect with me on Wednesday, all right? Like book some time with me on Wednesday, send me an email. Otherwise, guys, thank you so much. I'll stick around for anyone who has a problem, but I'm going to stop recording now, and I'll see you guys next week.